Hey everyone, so the year is winding down, and it's so easy to get totally swept up in the end of year rush, right? But what if we could take a moment to look back in a way that's, well, a little more meaningful? That's exactly what we're going to dive into today, the art of quiet year-end reflection.
There's just something about this time of year, isn't there? I mean, even if things are still chaotic, it feels like there's this internal slowdown. And this quote, it just nails that feeling. It's about finding that quiet space where all the noise from the past few months finally settles. And you can start to see things, patterns that were just impossible to notice before.
All right, so once we find that quiet space, how do we actually make sense of the year? Well, our first instinct is usually to slap a label on it. So let's talk about how to get beyond those simple judgments, beyond just good or bad.
We all do it, right? We ask ourselves these huge black and white questions. Was my year good or bad? Was I successful or was it a disappointment? But the thing is, these questions, they're kind of a trap. They back us into a corner and, honestly, they stop us from seeing what really happened.
So this approach has a name. It's evaluation. And it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's about judging the outcomes. You know, did I get that promotion? Did I hit my sales target? Did I lose the weight? It's all about measuring our year against some kind of external checklist. But there's another way to do this, and that's reflection. What's so cool about reflection is that it completely throws out the rulebook on outcomes. It's not about what you did, it's about noticing what changed inside of you. It asks a much kinder, much more curious question. What changed in me this year?
So let's put these two side by side, because this is really the core of it all. Evaluation is about judging. It puts you in the role of a harsh critic looking at external results. But reflection is about noticing. It's about being a curious observer of your own internal journey. See the difference? We're trying to shift from being a judge to just being an observer.
Okay, that brings up a really important question, right? If this whole thing is about internal change, then how do we actually change? Because it's probably not in the way you think.
We tend to think that real change comes from some big, dramatic moment. But that's rarely how it works. Real, lasting change usually comes from those little, repeated situations. You know the ones I'm talking about? That same challenge that just keeps popping up over and over, testing your patience, forcing you to get clearer. That's where the real growth happens.
And there's actually a pretty clear path to how this works. First, you have those repeated situations. Then, after a while, you start to see patterns emerge. Oh, wow, this keeps happening. And it's from seeing those patterns that, bam, you finally gain a real insight. It's not fast, it's not flashy. It's a slow, steady process of learning.
And this whole process helps us see the huge difference between just reacting to something and actually understanding it. Reacting is that knee-jerk thing we do, right? It's immediate, it feels urgent, but it's temporary. Understanding, man, that takes time. It arrives slowly, but when it finally clicks, it changes everything about how you see the world. And that kind of change, that's the stuff that sticks.
So this idea of lasting change leads us to something that I think is so important: appreciating our quiet progress. This is all about learning to see the small, meaningful shifts that we usually just completely overlook. Because let's be real, progress doesn't always shout from the rooftops. In fact, most of the time, the most important changes in us happen so quietly, so subtly, that they are incredibly easy to miss. Especially if we're only looking for those big, flashy fireworks moments.
So what does this quiet progress actually look like? Well, think about this stuff. Maybe you developed better judgment this year. Maybe you finally started setting clearer boundaries with someone. Or maybe you found just a little more patience. Or how about this one? Gaining a deeper sense of what's actually worth your energy. These are the real trophies of your year.
Okay, so we've noticed our internal shifts. We see our quiet progress. Now what? What do we do with all this? And this brings us to our final and maybe the most important point of all. The goal isn't what you think. It's awareness, not action.
I absolutely love this quote. It just takes all the pressure off, doesn't it? The point of all this reflection isn't to force yourself to make a massive change tomorrow. No, it's just about gaining clarity. It's that clarity, that awareness that prepares you for whatever's next, so you can walk into it with a little less confusion and a lot more confidence.
So you can literally put down that pen and paper. This isn't about making a giant list of New Year's resolutions. Nope. The real goal here is just to acknowledge what you see now, to simply recognize what is clearer to you today than it was 12 months ago. That's the win. That's the whole point.
And so that leaves us with one last really simple question to carry with us. Instead of asking, was it a good year or a bad year, we get to ask something much more powerful. After everything, all the ups and the downs, what do you now see more clearly?